Well, what's up, you guys? I'm really excited to do this. So this is gonna kick off actually like a whole workshop series that we're gonna do for the rest of the year. So today is gonna be kind of the first, again, the kickoff to what we're gonna be talking about. So today is gonna feel like a smorgasbord of different things we're gonna go over. All right, so I really want you to leave today with more questions than answers, right? Hopefully I can answer some of those questions. But part of what we're going to be doing for the rest of the year, every month, is having these workshops going over a lot of things that you're maybe struggling with, dealing with in your fitness journey or mental health journey, and helping you to give language for why some of these things are happening. For somebody, just personally, I'll share a little bit about my story as well. Like, this work has legitimately saved my life, right? That's also why I'm so passionate about it. And I think on social media today, we see so much misinformation or just so much information. We're like, well, what is right and what is wrong? So, come with that today, right? With whatever you have questions on, because I would love to answer them, or even just send you in the right direction as well. So, yeah, really excited. Okay, so Gabe, you can go to the next slide. All right, so before we get into any of this, I'll probably start every workshop off with this because this is really important. Because when we talk about nervous system regulation, when we talk about your health, and with anything that I'm doing with my athletes, these three things have to be key, right? Because when we talk about the mental, emotional side of things, we don't tend to talk about this, but this can 100% derail everything mentally and emotionally that's happening inside your body. So when we're talking about getting to the root of something versus going straight there, I kind of like to pick through pieces, right? So the first thing that I always will tell my clients to do is that they come to me and they're saying hey, I'm not recovering well, or I'm not, reaching my goals, or I'm getting sick all of a sudden. I will start with these every single time, right? Which is the big three. Go ahead to the next slide, Gabe. Okay, so hydration, right? So I'm not gonna go over these in depth, right, but what we know about hydration is the more dehydrated we are, the more stress that's going to happen in our body, right? So again, I don't know if any of y'all in here right now are on supplements, which we can go over later, but this is going to be something significant, right? If you are taking supplements, for example, like creatine, right? Everyone knows creatine is really, really good and it's so researched, but if you're not drinking enough water, it's not going to do anything for you. Right, so I've had a lot of youth athletes, Trey, you probably know who I'm talking about, but I've had a youth athlete reach out to me when he was in the hospital, and he was like, hey, I'm having body cramps. And before I even asked anything, I just said, hey, are you on creatine? And he's like, yeah, how'd you know? It's because I guarantee you're not drinking enough water. So part of when we talk about those big three, it's you don't have to worry about any supplements until those three things are really, really dialed in. And the truth is, most of us don't do them well enough because there's so much misinformation out there of what does that actually look like. So again, these areas, just cortisol will go up, performance will go down, recovery will go down, and this is really important, cravings will go up. So our brain, when we are dehydrated, doesn't know the difference between thirst and hunger cravings. So anybody at night always craving sugary or salty foods? Most of the time it's because we're dehydrated. Right? Next time you are craving that at night and you have ate enough food in a day, just focus on drinking water. And I guarantee you that craving will subside for the meantime. Go ahead, next slide, Gabe. Nutrition. Okay, so again, this is across the spectrum for my athletes, but for honestly even GPP, is under eating is a huge common denominator for most people. When I say under eating, it's a level of things, right? You could think of under eating from the standpoint of literally not eating enough food, but also under eating the right kinds of food, right? So I always use this example. Imagine if I had a Chick-fil-A sandwich and French fries. Let's say that's 900 calories. But then I brought in rice, chicken, fruit, vegetables. That could be 700 calories, but that's obviously way more food, right? So when we're talking about eating from a under eating standpoint, we have to think about a holistically whole food perspective. Does that make sense? So when we're talking about under eating, it's under eating versus the activity that you're doing in the day, and that's just not working out. That's also what is happening to your nervous system, which we'll get to in a little bit, because a lot of that is what we don't notice. Blood sugar crashes equals stress. Chronic dieting equals stress. And you'll keep seeing that, right? Just stress, 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 stress. And the reason why I'm doing that is because a lot of the times everything is classified as stress, but we don't really know what that means, right? So we'll dive into that here in a bit. And then sleep, right? The last thing of this big three, which is the most important. So sleep is not optional, right? Less than 7 hours, hunger hormones go up, inflammation goes up, recovery goes down, and emotional regulation goes down, right? So again, we talk about nervous system regulation. If we really want to be regulated, no breath work, no, somatic experience is going to make your body feel regulated if you're under eating, you're not sleeping enough, and you're not drinking enough water. Like, you will always feel really, really emotionally distressed, right? So making sure those three things are locked in. So, for me, I think this was probably the most beneficial, because going to counseling as a young kid, I still didn't realize how my patterns, like from a lifestyle standpoint, were playing into my stress and my anxiety, right? Because I was eating sugary foods all the time. I ate Pop-Tarts probably like twice a day, and I wasn't sleeping well, right? And I don't want you to get too hung up on this, like the less than 7 hours. It's more so your quality and how deep of sleep you're getting every night, right? So everybody knows what REM sleep is, right? So REM sleep is just your deep sleep, and those happen in around 90-minute cycles, right? And you're wanting around 3 to 4 of those a night, right? So that, again, is subject to whatever. If you can sleep 7 hours and all 7 of those hours is really deep sleep, then that's fantastic. But most people can't get that deep sleep because of the other things that are playing into it, right? So does anyone like toss and turn at night, right? Does anyone get up in the middle of the night to use the bathroom, right? So that's all sleep disruption, right? So even if you're like, no, I sleep 9 hours a night, but you wake up 3 times a night, well, it doesn't really add up. So a couple things on that too. 2 quick, fun facts. If you wake up in the middle of the night to use the bathroom, cut off liquids 2 hours to 90 minutes before you go to bed every single night, and food. Because a lot of us eat carbohydrates right before we go to sleep. And remember, carbs store water. So that's just like you drinking a bunch of water right before you go to bed. So if you cut those off, again, at a time limit every single night, I promise you'll wake up a lot less. I always use this story. I had an elite level athlete that I coached in Australia. Tori knows who I'm talking about, and he just was not sleeping. He would wake up every night like 3 to 4 times, and it's because he would chug a bunch of water because he was dehydrated all day at 10 p.m. and he'd fall asleep at like 10:15. So again, part of that as well was like making sure he was drinking enough water throughout the day so he wasn't trying to make it up at the very end of the night. Another thing with the toss and turning, that also has to do a lot of times with dehydration, right? Hydration is supposed to like regulate our body temperature. Same thing with fats, which we'll get into that maybe at the end. So if we're not having enough of that, your body is going to, one, heat up in the middle of the night because it's in that deep parasympathetic state, and it's in rest and digest, so it has to heat up. And if you don't have enough water to regulate your body temperature, what's going to happen? You'll wake up and toss and turn. Does that make sense? So just really good thing to keep in mind. Go next slide. Okay, but I'm not stressed. All right, so this is where we're going to get into the weeds of it, right? So stress isn't just busyness, right? You can have a whole bunch of different kinds of stress, right? Training stress, relational stress, emotional stress. But stress is really anything your nervous system has to adapt to, right? So if you could think of something that might not be stressful for you, but could be completely stressful to somebody else if your nervous system has to adapt to it. So the next slide should be different kinds of stress. So we have eustress versus distress, all right? So when we talk about stress, right, again, in the social media world, we think stress and cortisol is like this bad thing that we got to stay away from. It's actually really healthy. Like if we don't have cortisol in our body, we wouldn't be living, right? But it's the excess. It's too much of the amounts of cortisol that sends our body into like overdrive, right? So again, when we talk about eustress, think about like growth. Anything that you're doing inside your body or outside. So think about you being here in the gym working out, that's eustress, right? Like breaking your muscle down, that's eustress because it's good stress for your body. Distress, again, could be like overload, right? It could be the loss of somebody in your life. You're getting into a car accident. You have overwhelming things that are happening in your family system, right? Like that can feel really distressful. So again, those are really important to navigate because we want to actually live in this. Like our bodies are made to endure stress, but they're not made to stay in stress, right? So the longer we stay in stress, the more our bodies are going to shut down and not function the way we need to. So again, training is good until recovery can't keep up. Go to the next slide. Okay, allostatic load. So the wear and tear from chronic stress. So when stress never resolves, your baseline shifts, high cortisol, fatigue, and tension become a normal. So go to the next slide real quick, Gabe. Just want to make sure I don't talk too soon. Yeah, go back. You're good. Okay, so has anyone ever heard of the word allostatic before, like allostasis? Okay, so allostasis is a term, again, that means like this chronic load of stress, like your body's holding on to that all the time. And again, this is when people, you could ask somebody, like, hey, are you stressed? And like, no, like I'm not stressed, I'm not overwhelmed. And my question for those people is like, what are you doing in the in-between, right? In between of life, like in between your work, in between your working out, in between your relationships, like what are you doing? Because if you spend the majority of your time scrolling on your phone or you're just busy, that is your body being so distracted to say, hey, we can't slow down because there's so much happening inside of us. So again, part of this talk, and like maybe if you were at the last talk, is the point of it is, can you start to become aware of what's happening inside your body, right, throughout the day? Because we are made in our in-between to just be still and to just be outside and just to be in nature, but something keeps us away from that. Right, and it's this stress that our body is dealing with on the inside, which we'll get into now in this next slide, which is trauma, right? So again, I get so weary of saying this word because it's so triggering itself of like trauma. I like to think of this word as like a nervous system impact, right? So going back to what I was saying about stress before, right? Stress, again, is anything that's impacting our nervous system, positively or negatively. Right? And this is what trauma does to our nervous system. It really impacts it. And most of us, again, think of this, big T trauma, right? Which is like abuse, neglect, the car crash, like the obvious things. But what we tend to forget about is the small T trauma. And enough small T trauma moments not only have the same impact as big T, but sometimes have even a more extreme impact on the body, right? So if I could create a visual for you to think about, if like these tickets were all like small T trauma, and I could fill up the whole thing with this, right? And then big T trauma could be just like one little marble, right? So you only endured like one big traumatic event in your life, but you have all these small T trauma moments. So maybe you're asking yourself, okay, well, what is a small T trauma moment? A small T trauma moment is anything that your body, again, was impacted by that didn't feel safe enough in the response of whatever the event happened. Does that make sense? So think about this for a second. If growing up you had parents that didn't create the emotional safety for you to express your needs, right? So for me, I always use this example. When I finished playing a game, let's say I didn't do well, right, in my basketball game, and we didn't win, or I didn't play well individually, in the car, my dad would actually just berate me on what I could have done better. Right? And even if he's trying to be positive and trying to help me to think of things that I could have done better to be a better player, but what if I'm feeling like really sad and upset about my performance? Well, my brain will start to learn, okay, well, my sadness and my anger about how I felt is not welcome because now it's being dismissed. And I know that you're probably thinking, well, how is that trauma? It's because of the impact that it's having on our nervous system and on our brain, right? Like brain scans can literally show us like moments like that happen over and over again will get stored in our nervous system, and know that, hey, every time we get back into this moment, my body's not going to trust to open up. My body's not going to trust to say what I'm wanting to feel. Does that make sense? Another scenario you can maybe think about is one a lot of my clients will always mention is if you've grown up in a single parent family. It doesn't always happen in single parent families. It can happen if your parents are still together. But if you have a single parent, most of the time the parent is overwhelmed because they're a single parent. And they subconsciously, whether they say it to you or not, you will see that they are overwhelmed, right? So as the child, you will take on this load of like, well, I can't share my overwhelmness with the parent because if I do, that can maybe detach our connection with each other. But that thought of what your nervous system has is something that, again, your nervous system isn't designed to feel because you're designed to feel cared for in your nervous system. Does that make sense? So the pressure that your body's feeling in the moment to care for your caregiver is something that, again, will keep your nervous system in this chronic state of on, right? I always have to scan, is my parent okay? Are they okay? Are they overwhelmed? Can I come to them now? And if you're constantly staying in that, your nervous system is just not going to shut off, right? And that's what we talk about when you come into your day, you're in that allostasis throughout the day, right? And then in your in between, it's like your mind can't shut off. So again, another question to ask yourself is, in the in between, what is happening? Are you scrolling? Is your mind racing? Do you feel like you have to do a to-do list all the time, right? Because those are the things that your nervous system is convincing yourself to say, hey, like, we have to do this or we're not going to be okay. Which, again, our nervous systems are made for, like, containment and repair, right? Where we can have this to say, hey, you feel this way, but I'm here to connect with you. Make sense? Any questions on that? Go ahead to the next slide. All right, so the body stores unfinished stress. So this is one of my favorite things to explain, right? So you've probably heard me talk about like the zebra running away from the lion and why zebras don't get ulcers. It's a really good book if you want to read it. But this is how stress is supposed to happen in our lives, right? So I'm going to use this animalistic style of relating for a second. So if a lion is running towards a zebra, right? That zebra is going to immediately get put into its sympathetic state, its fight or flight, right? Its stress response immediately. Now, if that zebra gets away from the lion and finds safety, what is the first thing that zebra does, right? You can go watch a Nat Geo documentary and this will happen. The zebra will immediately start to shake, just like a wet dog coming out of a pool. And that shaking to us is crying. That shaking to us is screaming. That shaking to us is any emotional response from what we just encountered. Does that make sense? So what happens if the lion in our lives are the people that are actually supposed to make us feel safe, right? What if the lion is our parents? So if they are putting our system into this sympathetic state, well, we have to find safety to turn that off. And if we never have safety, guess what's going to happen to our bodies? We're constantly going to be in that state of fight or flight, right? And again, this isn't to say, oh my gosh, my parents are messing me up. It's to say, no, like the impact that they've made on my body, I have to address. And I have to find safety to allow my nervous system to calm down, right? And find safety. But again, that will never happen until you get into a position, like it doesn't happen individually. It doesn't happen in isolation, right? The zebra will get to its zebra pack, feel safe, shake its body, and then get back to grazing, which is so crazy, right? They can go from running away from a lion, right? So imagine if we were running away from a lion, right? And then in that moment, I said, hey, do you want to eat a burger? And you're like, what? No, like, do you not see what's happening right now? But the zebra can, because when he gets to that position, he shakes, gets rid of all of the emotional stress that he's had, and he can get back to the parasympathetic and start grazing on the grass again. But again, right there, we can go on and on and on, which we'll get into in workshops down the road. But that right there is why digestive issues happen. Because imagine if your body's stuck in this chronic state of survival all the time. Well, your body's not going to digest anything because it needs to be in the parasympathetic to do that. So one, you might be eating food, but you also might not be absorbing any of it. So you think of like corn, right? When you eat corn, you can see it in the toilet, right? That's what all of your food's doing, honestly. It's coming in and going out, right? And that's why it's like, hey, I'm following this diet plan. I'm doing all of the things, but nothing's working. Because these are things that are happening underneath the hood that your body's just like going, and there's like no digestion is happening at all, right? And that's just one thing that chronic stress can do. Does that make sense about completing those circles? So again, thinking about in your life, what are those things that you're saying in your day? Like, what are the have-tos? What are the styles of relating that you do that bring you a sense of calm, but it actually brings you a sense of more like, again, hypervigilance, right? Like you're constantly scanning, you're constantly like making sure everything has to be okay. That's keeping you away from actually being restful, like putting all distractions away. You can just be, right? What's keeping you away from that? So window of tolerance, all right? So this is again, the practical side of where we want to be. So in neuroscience, this is like the ABCs of neuroscience, right? Like we want to understand this so well because this is where we want to live, right? This is our capacity. This is our window of tolerance. If we have this that is really thin, our capacity for everything is going to feel really, really overwhelming, right? So for example, let's say that today I lost my job, my wife left me, and I lost my car, I lost my house, I lost everything. And then someone like threw a pie in my face at the end of the day. Do you think my response to the person that threw the pie in the face is going to be like a good response? Probably not. I'll probably like knock that person out, right? But it's because of all the things that are pressing down on me that's shrinking my window of tolerance. Now, do the opposite effect. Imagine that me and my wife are on vacation, right? We're having a blast. No work. We're having so much fun, and a kid comes up and pies me in the face. Well, do you think my reaction is going to be a little bit different? 100%. My capacity to take on that emotional resilience in that moment is going to be a lot more. So what if we could be like that every single day? Like we could have the capacity to endure all this emotional stress that comes into our lives day to day. And how we do that, again, is by expanding this window. So you see these two words right here, hyper and hypo. We talked about these in the last workshop. But again, when we think about hyperarousal and even the word arousal, we might think of like the sexual side. But again, when I want you to think about arousal, it's just about your body reacting to something, right? So for example, if we went to the mountains or wherever is beautiful for you guys, right? Tori loves the mountains. And if we went to the mountains, Tori's heart rate would be running. She's like, this is the most beautiful thing in the world. That's hyperarousal, right? And let's say we were climbing mountains all day. At the end of our day of hiking, we wouldn't come back to here. We would actually dip down in the low end, which is hypoarousal, which is feeling tired, we're withdrawal, like we're just like, man, that was such a long, long day. But both of those states are still a dysregulated state, right? And we don't want to live in those. And a lot of us confuse the lowness and the slow for feeling regulated, but we're actually really exhausted from running away from the lion all day. So again, most of our days look like this. We get up in the morning, we're running away from the lion, and at the end of the day, we're exhausted, right? Because we're in hypo. It's not, oh, I'm finally resting. It's like, no, like you're still on the low end. Like when you nervous system regulation, go to the next slide, Gabe. Is that what we're talking about? I don't know if you're here. You're good. So nervous system regulation, this is like one of the biggest, go over one more. Yeah. Here, let me see your computer. Sorry. So nervous system regulation, when we think about it from what we're seeing on like social media, we think of like this calm, like woo-saw, like I nothing is going to affect me. Well, that's not really what regulated means. Regulation means that I have the capacity to withstand like any emotional adversity. Right? I can feel my emotions without it making me feel like I'm losing control. Right? So for example, if something came in here and like scared me and scared all of us for a second, I could feel that in my body, but then come back down in a regulated way. Versus if somebody came in here and scared us, I would be scared for the rest of the day, maybe for the next 3 weeks. Right? So again, regulation is the capacity for you to ebb and flow through emotions without overwhelm. Right? So again, it's like somebody pies me in the face and I'm like, oh, like that just really scared me or really like jacked my heart rate up. But it's not going to keep me there. I get to stay back into my optimal zone. Does that make sense? So that's where we want to stay. Like we want to stay in the middle part of our window, and the more that we can expand that by, again, eliminating these things that are causing us stress, which it can be the practical things in your day, right? Like, managing your to-do list, getting outside, working out, eating well, those things really do matter. But if we're not getting to the root of why you're staying in this chronic state of survival, you're going to continue to stay in it over and over and over again. Does it make sense? So you can be disciplined and dysregulated, right? So this kind of going back to what I was saying. So you could have your whole plan together. You could be hitting your macros, you could be crushing your workouts, and you could be doing all of the water and hydration tricks out there, but you can still be chronically stressed, right? Because this is the part where most doctors, practitioners, they won't know to go this deep because they don't have enough time to ask you all these questions, right? How's your sleep? How's your relationships? How's your job? How's all these things that could be causing your body to be in this constant state of stress, right? So our next workshop is going to be all about like autoimmune illnesses and sicknesses. And did you know that 80% of autoimmune illnesses come from stress, right? And that stress has been known to be like traumatic stress, and not big T stress. Like we're talking about small T instances that have put our nervous system into this constant state. Okay, so this acronym that I made, just made out of the blue because I kept saying this all the time to my athletes. I was like, don't make decisions dysregulated. I'm like, oh, DMDD. And what I mean by that is, remember, if we know about the brain, when the brain is dysregulated, we cannot access our prefrontal cortex. That means we cannot think clearly. That means that any decision that we make when we're dysregulated is going to be based off emotion, right? So all of us, like, especially in my realm, right, with athletes and men, we're so toxic when it comes to emotions. Like, don't feel your emotions. You can't feel your emotions. And what's so funny is the more that we don't feel our emotions, the more dysregulated we become. So those toxic men that don't feel their emotions are actually very emotional because they're always acting out of emotion. Does that make sense? So when I say don't make a decision dysregulated, it means you have to understand that your body is always going to be putting decisions in your head to find safety, right? So for a lot of my athletes, like let's say they are out of school and it's not going well, right? I work with Southeastern's men's basketball team. And let's say the kids are not getting playing time. Well, what do you think that kid is going to want to think? I should go to a different school. I should transfer, right? I should quit basketball. But why? It's because of what is happening is dysregulating their nervous system, right? So in that state of not getting what they want, their first instinct is going to say, hey, I want to choose something that's going to make me feel better. So this is where sabotage comes in, right? This is where when I have clients that are dealing with like unhealthy relationship with food, this is where this comes in. Because when we're stressed out, our mind is going to constantly put thoughts in our brain of like, hey, you need to go and do this because this is what's going to make us feel better even for the moment, right? And again, our brain, when it's dysregulated, doesn't know good from bad. So it's not trying to sabotage you. It's just trying to keep you safe and regulated and feeling a sense of relief. So for me, right, like I grew up eating Pop-Tarts all the time. So what do you think I'm going to crave when I'm stressed? Pop-Tarts, right? Because my brain has learned, hey, when we're stressed, you've ate Pop-Tarts before and it has relieved us a little bit, right? So even though the brain knows, like, yeah, there could be other options, we just know that this is going to be the best option because it's the most efficient. Your brain loves efficiency. Why? Because if it doesn't do the efficient way, it's going to use too much energy. So again, go back to what we talked about before. Imagine if you're not eating enough, right? We have to eat to get energy for our body. If we don't eat, our body does not have energy. So again, imagine you're not eating enough, then you're chronically stressed and you're chronically overtraining. Your body's going to be like, hey, we're going to start to work our body in a way that's so efficient. It could be detrimental to your health, but we have to think about efficiency, right? So I talk about like the tongue. You know that we're supposed to breathe through our nose regularly, right? Did you know that your tongue is supposed to sit on the roof of your mouth naturally? Does anybody know that? Yeah, most of us don't because most of us, our tongues don't. My tongue doesn't. And why doesn't it? Because it costs too much energy for my tongue to stay up there all the time, right? So again, if I'm chronically stressed, I will breathe through my mouth because it's more efficient. I can get more oxygen through my mouth, even though it's detrimental to my health. Does that make sense? Right? Another way to think of this is when we think of autoimmune issues, right? Let's use hyperthyroidism, for example. So hyperthyroidism is when your thyroid starts to shut down, okay, because of stress, but this is why this happens. Let's say your brain is communicating to your body and says, hey, body, we are really stressed today. We're getting put into the sympathetic, so I need you to pump glucose into the bloodstream, right? Because that's what happens when we get put into that sympathetic state. And the body's like, okay, well, we're going to do that. And then the body finds out, oh, wait, we're not eating enough. Like, we don't have enough energy. So then the body tells the brain, hey, we don't have any energy to pump more glucose into the bloodstream. And the brain says, okay, you're right. Let's start to shut down parts of the body that aren't super important so we can actually keep the person living. Because hopefully they're going to end up taking care of us down the road. Does that make sense? So your body's actually shutting down parts of your body to protect you. Because it's like, hey, we don't have enough energy to take care of those. They're super important, but we'd rather shut those down to take care of your heart and your lungs and things that are going to keep you living every single day. Keep the brain functioning. Does that make sense? So your brain is always attempting to bring you safety and regulation and protect you. It's like survival. It's like survival of the fittest. That's all your brain's trying to do. It doesn't know good from bad. So it's like, again, when you have these thoughts of like wanting to quit or wanting to get out of something, like ask yourself, like, what is happening inside my body right now? Is it just because I'm dysregulated, right? Like, you know how many times I've wanted to like switch my job or like get out of what I'm doing Why? Do you think that ever happens when I'm having a great day? No. It always happens when I'm stressed. So again, can we just pause for a second and just say, hey, I have a lot going on. Can I just get to a place that is safe for me to feel all of that I'm feeling? But again, here's the sad truth, is most of us will never find that. So we'll be in this dysregulated state for years. So we'll always make the emotional decisions. That was my life. I went from job to job, from school to school, trying to find like a sense of like safety, and just kept running into a brick wall, Like we're made to trust, like, hey, no, like we're okay. But again, imagine if we didn't have that safety growing up. The lion was always chasing us. We could never slow down. So of course, our first instinct is going to be to hop from one thing to the next. Makes sense? So remember, DMDD. So what's missing? Okay, so understanding what's happening in your body, right? It's not more effort, it's more awareness. Again, awareness is just the first step, right? You could be so aware of all these things. You could read all the books. Great. That's going to give you a great level of awareness. But that's just where you need to start. So I did a really fun experiment at one of the Mayhem camps. I think Faith was there. And I had one of the coaches, we were doing a workshop just like this. I had one of the coaches like interrupt me. And no one knew it was going to happen, right? Just me and the coach and the coaches that were doing the lecture. And everybody was like this. Because basically he interrupted me and started to disagree with what I was teaching. And everyone in the audience was like, oh my gosh, like what is going on? But again, it was an experiment to help me to explain how you can feel things that are happening in your body that you don't pay attention to. So everyone in that moment felt their heart rate go up. Some people were like standing up, like ready to like fight or like stand up for me or stand up for their coach. And again, all of those things happen to us in a day, but we ignore them, right? So how much times are you tapping your foot in a day? How many times, like right now, my hands are kind of clammy just because I'm talking to you guys, right? But if I don't pay attention to those little tells, I could go to the end of my day, again, feel so exhausted and question like, man, why am I always so tired? And I'm not listening to like these little triggerings that are happening to me in the day and getting curious about them, right? So again, being in touch with like, what are these signals? What are these tells that are my body's giving me? Because all of them are signs of dysregulation. Like if I'm regulated, my hands are not going to be clammy, my foot's not going to be tapping, my mind's not going to be racing, right? So again, if those things are happening, it's just an invitation to invite kindness in to say, hey, what is going on? Like, what am I being triggered by? What am I telling myself that I need to do to feel okay? Make sense? And then regulation doesn't equal calm. So again, going back to that, that's where that slide was. So this is, if you want to write down something that's really important, it's your nervous system feeling safe enough to stay present. Most of us don't live in the present, right? And we always, when we talk about like in psychology, everybody's like, the past is in the past. Like, why do we have to talk about the past? I get that. I'm somebody that doesn't want to talk about the past. I really don't. But the thing is, since our nervous systems, when they're dysregulated, they don't know past and present. So let's say that thing happened to me yesterday. That happened to me when I was a kid, that story of my dad. Well, if I get into that with my wife today, it's going to think that that conversation I had with my dad was yesterday. A dysregulated brain cannot tell time. Because remember, the prefrontal cortex is shut off. So all logic is gone. So anything that's happened to me as a 2-year-old, my body's still going to respond to it here today in the present. So most of us actually are not present because we're living out of the past every single day, right? So that's why it's so important to engage with, hey, where has my nervous system learned that this is going to be my new style of relating, right? And how can I, and again, offer kindness and care and compassion into those moments to say, hey, we can relax. Like, we're okay now. Like, we're not in this situation anymore. My body doesn't have to respond in this way, right? Another example I'll give, there's a really good book called What Happened to You. It's just about a boy that, smells a scent that reminded him of his dad. But that makes me think of one time where my wife, she burped in my face, right? Which I don't care. We burp and we fart all the time, right? But we had onions and like barbecue one night. And she burped in my face, not like purposefully, right? She was just like leaning over me and like breathed on me. And I was so triggered to the point where I started to notice, I'm like, wow, like why is that so deep for me? You know what immediately came up for me? My dad. When my dad was drunk and he would eat barbecue, he would come so close to me and breathe on me. It was so triggering for my body. And remember, how our brain inputs information is through our senses. So what we hear, what we see, what we touch, what we feel, what we smell, like all of those things is how information gets inputted into our brains. So if that smell that my dad has was registered as a threat to me, which it was, because I was like, my dad's not safe. So my brain said, okay, that's a threat. So anytime that I will smell something similar to that, what do you think my brain's going to do? We have to put up a guard. Like, we have to put up a defense because that is so triggering to us. All right, so think about anything that could be really small in your life that just like, man, it's so triggering. Like, I hate when people like chew with their mouth open, or I hate, like, again, just get curious. Like, is that something that you, what it was like for you growing up, like all the time? Like, it was so obnoxious, right? Like, my sisters used to put peanut butter all over the place. That's why I can't stand peanut butter, right? There's peanut butter all over the dishes, and I had to wash the dishes. I hated it, right? My wife thankfully got me back onto peanut butter a little bit, but I was like, that's because my body was so triggered by it. And again, it doesn't mean that we have to look at all these little triggers and that's what we have to fix, but all those triggers have an underneath layer, right, that we really need to start to engage with that keeps our body in this constant state, okay? Yeah, so any questions on that at all? Any questions on regulation or the triggers?
I think for a lot of people,
Yeah.
like food becomes the coping mechanism
Yep.
for the triggers.
Yep.
Can you talk about like the relationship and how like
Why that happens?
yeah, because like it is, it's like oh I'm stressed, well let's eat. You know, it's usually like 15 food for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Why is it food like usually like the fallback for
Yeah.
getting into like a normal?
100%. Well, yeah, a couple of things. One, a huge part of my story, right? Like I keep saying about the Pop-Tarts. Like, Pop-Tarts legitimately saved my life because my house was so chaotic, right? So let's talk about what food does for our nervous system. Remember what we talked about in the beginning. Like, if we eat, right, and we're especially eating carbohydrates and sugars, that is regulating for our body. Because remember, when we get put into that sympathetic state, our body is pumping glucose into our bloodstream, which is what? Carbohydrates. Right, so again, when we eat for comfort, we're not eating steak, right? Most of the time, I mean, maybe some of us are, but what are we eating? We're eating carbs, right? Most of us are. So that's the first thing to note, is that your brain does enjoy that because it is regulating to your body. So just like I said, if in stress you found food early on, anytime that you are stressed, that's going to be the first thought that runs into your mind is like, oh, I just need to go and eat. I just need to go and eat something because that is comfort for my body. But again, how we can kind of disrupt that pattern is saying, okay, well, what did you actually need in those moments of stress? What did you need to get your body to feel safe and regulated so it didn't need to go to something? All right, so you can classify any unwanted behavior, right? Input any unwanted behavior and say that it's the exact same thing. Like, people, will question, like, why do I always have these thoughts and it always comes to me? Again, anytime you have a thought of an unwanted behavior, you can immediately say, oh, wow, I'm dysregulated. Because remember, if those thoughts are coming into your brain, it's your brain's attempt to try to bring you safety, right? So what has helped me tremendously is anytime I get a thought that leads to more sabotage for my life, I can say, wow, like, there must be a lot going on. And guess what? There always is. I could say, oh yeah, the last 3 days, this happened, oh, and this happened, oh, and this is coming up, so my body's bracing. Of course, like, this is providing me relief from this. So the first thing that needs to enter in actually isn't shame, it's actually kindness. Because shame is what keeps us in the pattern. Kindness is what breaks the pattern. Because then you have to have kindness over these things that have saved you in your life. Like, kindness for the fact of, like, I had to go to Pop-Tarts, because where else would I have gone? I could have gone to drugs. I went to basketball, but thank God I had those things. But now in my present, I have to realize, like, that also wasn't bringing me rest. That also wasn't bringing me safety. But my goodness, I'm so thankful for that, and I don't want to shame those parts of me, right? Because again, the more we invite shame in, the more the cycle is just going to continue to do. Because what does shame do to our bodies? It dysregulates us. So we feel shameful for what we did. We get dysregulated, and then we get put right back into it over and over and over again. Make sense? Does that answer it? Yeah.
Maybe in future ones we'll talk about how we can like stop.
Yeah, we will. Yes. Yeah, we will. Yeah. Any other questions? I'll go over one more thing, but any other questions about stress, regulation? Does it make, yeah.
Connor, can you put the hypo, hyper,
Yep. Yep.
A lot of the talk I've heard this morning has been hyper. What if you're coming at it from a hypo, in other words, from bottom up?
Yes.
Can you speak to that, please?
Yes, 100%. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because hypo is actually where I stay more, right? I'm more in the hypo. I'm more in like the low. I feel like really depressed, like really low. And again, I have confused that for feeling like regulated or like, I'm just tired. But again, it's because I will go into moments of such extreme hyper that I will be in hypo for like weeks, maybe months, right? And again, in that moment, again, I have to be clear about this. These aren't bad. Like we want to be in hypo and hyper, but the thing is we don't want to stay in them for too long, right? So when I'm in hypo, I have to know that any thoughts that I'm getting inside of my head are going to be an attempt to try to bring me and upregulate me, because your brain is trying to do that for you, right? So where I feel the most sabotage is here, right? So I have to be aware of that, but I've also had to set that up for my life. So for example, something that really puts me into the hyper is my schoolwork that I'm doing, my intensive, because it's so emotionally draining. Like we're getting put into these group counseling scenarios. A lot has to come up in me. I'm crying. I'm like angry. Like so much is coming up for me. So I've already had 3 of them. So in the first 2, we realized, hey, after that intensive is over, I go to an extreme low. And then I'm in sabotage for like the next week. So when I know that this is coming up, I said, hey, this is going to put my body into an extreme hyper. So what do? The next days following the intensive, I take completely off so that I can say, hey, my body's going to go to that. I'm going to be really kind to it because that makes a lot of sense. I was just in hyper, so I'm going to have to go to that. So in those moments, you know what I'm doing? I'm setting up connection. I'm setting up play. I'm setting up things that bring my body a sense of regulation, right? So then I get to come up and upregulate myself in a much more healthier way rather than doing something that's going to sabotage me, that's going to keep me in that hypo. Does that kind of answer that? So yeah, a lot of us will live again in the hyper and then get to the hypo, and then this is where we make all of our decisions, right? This is where we make all of our choices that feel like, again, why do I stay in these cycles? Like coach is telling me I have to track my macros, but I can't do it. It's because, again, this is so hard to do anything. Like we're just looking for connection and care in this. But what's going to replace that are the things that we've always gone back to over and over and over again. Yeah, I'm curious what's like coming up for you guys. Like, part of again being and listening to your body in this is like noticing like where your mind's going off to, right? Like, have stories come up for you in this, right? Do you think, oh yeah, like, this did happen for me growing up, right? Or, I've noticed like I've kind of like checked out in some parts. Like that's your body responding to this. That's your body getting triggered by whatever we're talking about, or just being in a setting like this. So it's good to notice. Campbell, were you going to say something?
I wasn't.
Oh, okay.
I would say, like, it's cool to think about, or something that's coming from me is like belonging. Like, this sounds so great. I can't wait to be included in it. And I know there's also, like, that's very full of hopelessness. Because I know I'm not perfect.
Yeah.
And I know I'm going to fail. And it's just going to be a cycle. So I think a little bit of anxiety of like, oh God, the next time I'm really in hyper arousal, am I going to get equipped
Yeah.
to actually go back to the optimal zone, or am I going to, flail around again?
Yeah, and being hypo. Yeah, and that's the scary part, right? Because again, if the lion for us has been the safety, our first instinct is going to be like, oh yeah, I can't trust it. Like I can't trust that there's going to be care for me. So I'm just going to stay in it, right? I'm just going to stay running away. I'm just going to keep avoiding. And then why do you think, right, when our body slows down, what happens to us when we get on vacation? We get sick. And it's like, no, but everybody was sick on vacation. Yeah, because everybody is in that. It's not, you're not getting sick because they're sick. You're getting sick because everyone is running in this constant state of survival. It's not random, right? I have so many athletes that just get sick every 2 months. And you know why? It's because they're doing a competition every 2 months. I say, hey, we got to stop competing every 2 months. You can't do that. Because every time you get into competition, remember, hyperarousal can be working out. When you come into the gym, that is hyperarousal. Why do you think there's so much research on cooling down? Because if we're not cooling down properly and you're leaving here and then getting into your car and then going into something stressful, well, you're stuck in it. You've yet to come down to a regulated spot. Right? So that's when these practical things of like diaphragmatic breathing and getting your body in a position where you can feel regulated really does matter. But again, the deeper part of it is like, what is keeping you in it all the time? Because you can do all the breathing, but in a body of survival, no breathing is going to help. Trust me. Because I do it all the time, and I'm like, I start gasping trying to breathe through my nose because I'm so stressed. Right? So we have to deal with what is the core of this? What's keeping my body in this state?
Yeah, so you talk about replacing shame with kindness.
Yeah.
What would you tell somebody who's never really experienced kindness or who's never had kindness offered to them?
Yeah.
Into having like, how do I do that myself?
Yeah.
Like, keep that.
Yeah, great question. Yeah, because most of us are not going to trust it, right? Like it's going to be really hard for us to offer ourselves kindness if we've never experienced it. So this whole process, like it can't happen in isolation. We can't, like sadly, I wish it could be this way. We could just go home, read all these books, do all the practices, and we're healed. But it doesn't happen that way. Like it has to happen in connection. Why? Because that's where the trauma happens. Trauma happens in connection. So to heal that, you have to come back in connection. Not in connection with the person that's caused the trauma, but in connection with somebody that can keep you safe. Like who is your zebra pack, right? And that's what you have to start to find. Like who can you trust to start to engage with this in? And for me, like I didn't have anybody, so I had to find a therapist. Like I had to find someone because I had no safety in that, right? And that starting to engage those moments of my life is really what allowed my body to just be like, ah. Like last year for the first time, probably like first time like heavily in my life, I felt probably regulated for the first time, right? And again, I don't want that to discourage you of someone who like studies this work, but like getting to feel like a truly regulated state. And what I mean, it wasn't just a day, like it was like a whole like month where nothing was like phasing me. And it felt so weird. Like I was talking to Tori, I'm like, what is going on? Like, am I in hypo right now? Like, I don't know, right? But again, the difference is the capacity that I get to have, right? But that only came from engaging with a lot of this harm. So the last thing I was going to say is when we talk about these cycles, right? These loops, right? These stress loops. Once that line attacks us, let's just say it's a scenario like I've given. If we don't have any safety to contain that, like I said, our body's going to stay in it. So part of the invitation is when we talk about grieving isn't just like, oh, like I lost a loved one. It is. But part of grieving is, can we allow our bodies to express the emotions that weren't safe enough to let out in those moments, right? For example, I'll always use a big T trauma moment to help you to classify it, but I want you to, again, get curious on where these could have happened in small moments. So there was a moment where my mom, like, literally abandoned me, right? Left me on a curb. And in that moment, my mom was manic, and I felt really angry at her. Like, I wanted to yell at her. I wanted to scream at her, but I didn't. I pleaded with her. I said, please, like, please, 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 please don't leave. Like, please don't leave. Because she's manic, right? And what is the risk? If I would have let onto my anger, which is part of what I should have done, that should have been my response, what could have that done to me? That could have erased her from my life. And even though it still did, the risk was I'd rather not show my anger and plea with her. So now in my present, I actually show a lot of anger, but guess what's underneath that anger? It's actually a plea. Like, can you just see me? Like, can you just see like what I'm feeling inside? But again, it's because like I've never had the space to let out my anger in a healthy way, because that would have eliminated my attachment. Right? The last story I'll share on this is, imagine a kid, right, 3 years old, okay? And they go to their parents and they said, hey, I want a cookie before dinner. What do you think the parent's response is going to be? No, you can't have a cookie, which is fine, right? That's what the parent should say. But what do you think the 3-year-old, remember he's 3 years old, let's maybe even say they're 2, what do you think their response is going to be? Cry. They're going to throw a fit, right? Is that normal? 100% that's normal. That's what a 2-year-old, 3-year-old should do. But what do you think the response of a parent who's really overwhelmed is going to be? Go to your room. Stop crying. You're being ridiculous. Go. So what do you think that kid's going to learn about the emotion? Oh, then anytime I feel sadness or anger, I shouldn't feel this. So I will have to suppress this emotion every time I get into it. And I rather lose part of my authenticity than to lose my connection, right? Which is absurd, right? The fact that our brains will literally do that. And why do you think we get to our adult life and we're like, who am I? Like, who am I supposed to be? Because by the time we get there, so much of our authenticity has been chipped away that we're confused as to who am I and what do I do? Because we've learned to not trust what our body is made to do. Like, the kid does not think of, oh, I didn't get a cookie. What's the emotional response? So the answer is D, I'm going to be angry. No, the kid just gets angry because that is its response. And care in that moment doesn't look like dismissing the anger. It's the ability to sit with it and say, hey, like, we're here, you're okay. And helping the kid process it. Because what we know from research is insecure attachment, when that happens, did you know less of those moments and less of those big emotional moments happen? But where big emotional moments continue to happen is when they weren't addressed early on, right? So I know a lot of men that will cry over things that don't result in the way they should be crying, right? For example, my brother-in-law, her brother, right? He bawled his eyes out at our wedding. Couldn't get a single word out, right? It doesn't mean he shouldn't have been sad. It just means his emotion and the weight of that doesn't match up with the moment, right? And him getting put into that emotional setting just triggered something even deeper, and all the emotion came out in that moment, right? Why? It's because what we know about Tori's story is that in her household, emotion wasn't something that was relevant. Like, we couldn't talk about what's happening inside our bodies, right? So what's going to happen when we have an opportunity to? It's going to be like waterworks. Or you're going to do something and you're going to get so triggered that you're just going to lash out on somebody. Well, that doesn't happen when you have been safe to let it out in moments. But a lot of us as parents, we get so overwhelmed, right? Imagine if your kid's crying in the middle of the airport. What is a parent going to do? Come on, we got to go to the bathroom. What is that kid going to think? Oh, I feel so shameful now over being angry. So embarrassed over something that my body has like just done by itself, right? So again, this is for more so for us as well to notice. It's like, hey, how is our small window really impacting other people, right? And how is our little capacity really impacting somebody else because we're trying to rescue them, right? One of the things that I do so much in this work is I try to rescue so much of my athletes. Like, I want to rescue them so bad. They're like, yeah, like I didn't get care. I'm like, oh, but I care for you. I care. Because what is that like? That is like the kid is crying and say, oh, come here, don't cry, right? And what does that do? That immediately means that when I'm crying, I don't need to be crying, right? Like, my crying is wrong. But what would it be like for you to cry and just to be in the presence of care? It's the zebra. He gets to shake. The zebras aren't going to say, okay, you got 30 seconds to shake. No, that zebra's going to shake as much as he needs to, right? And that's what we need in our lives is the safety and the containment to shake. Another analogy would be like, David, if I was spotting you for benching, right, and you're doing like 8 to 12 reps, and every time you got close to failure, I just lifted your bar up. Versus maybe Tori, who's on this really good bench press cycle that's going to failure every time. She's going to outbench you. Just because her adaptation, right, to getting close to failure every time and being in that safer environment of like, I'm going to push it to failure because I know that Coach Jeremy is going to come and get me no matter what. But we're so close to just picking that up to rescue because we don't want you to endure the pain. But again, it's not pain. It's our body's natural response that's meant to happen. And in our lives, we have overprotective parents, right? And what does that do? It's like we think we're being intentional, and it is. The intention's great. But us rescuing too soon will actually eliminate our bodies from feeling what was made to be felt, right? And then again, it's always a thing, well, men shouldn't cry. It's like, well, yeah, the men are crying over things that they shouldn't be crying about because they were told not to cry. And if they would have just cried, now they actually will be way more emotionally resilient in their present. So, yeah. Make sense? Any questions? I could talk about this all day, but we're going to be here for a long time. So, yeah, any last minute questions? Nothing is off the tables. My website just launched, by the way. If you want to go check my website out, it's really cool. Yeah, I appreciate you guys. Again, this is the kickoff. We will get into the depths of like all of these little areas throughout the year, right? We're going to talk about, again, autoimmune health. We're going to talk about intensity, like what should your workouts look like in the busyness of your life. Is it too much intense? Why doesn't your body adapt the way it used to? What do I do when it changes? We're going to be talking about a lot of different things. So I'm really excited. So yeah, thank you guys. Appreciate you.